nature, where we live. So here again, we'll just be doing a lot of introductory concepts, and then in the later workshops, we'll go into a lot more detail and understanding. So our environment today, we look at it around us. We as the people living in the environment and our scientists, we treat the plants and the soils as a chemical process. They look at how each element affects the plant, what it does mechanically. We have been taught what fertilizers to use, what chemicals to spray, and what bugs to kill. The focus on when we look at agriculture, it's all about the yield. How much tons of crop can I get off my acre of land? But it has nothing to do about the well-being of the plant, the nutritional value of the plant, how these fertilizers are destroying the biology in the soil, and the overall impact on our environment in which we're living. So our current understanding of the plants, the soils, and fertilizers we use is about to change forever, because we've only ever been told half the story. And the plasma science is here to sort of tell the other half of the story, and almost an extension of the story that we have learned so far. So when we start looking at how we can use the plasma technology in nature, a lot of people will initially think, oh, okay, so now we can use this technology and now we can grow large and more abundant produce to eat. But I think once we've finished, you'll realize that this aspect is only going to be a small byproduct of these teachings and the real understanding of using the plasma and using in the nature. Through the plants and the environment, we will learn how plasma operates in living creatures. And all of these processes can then teach us how the universe works, because how the plants operate, how the soils, the trees, the environment operates is just a small fractal of how the universe works. So if we start observing everything around us, we will begin to understand how the bigger universe works. The field interactions between all of these different entities creates the soup of fields in which we live. Understanding this will allow us to create environments for all living things that support and nurture us all. And by understanding this science, we will learn how to restore nature and interact with the plants and animals in a very different way. You'll find that the web of life on this planet is connected on many levels. So from the smallest bacteria, which is amino acid based, to the most complex creatures, mammals, and more, we all share the common connection of this amino acid structure. And as Dr. Rodrigo introduced in the health section, the basic amino acid structure consists of your carbons, oxygens, hydrogens, and nitrogens. So in the human body, we saw that we were almost based on 96% of based on the carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. When we look the same at the plants, we find that they are almost also around 96% based on oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Just slightly different combinations, but together they total almost the same, 96%. When we have a look at bacteria, it's the same. The top four elements is carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen. The four building blocks of life on this planet. So when we come back to this picture again, we can see that all life on this planet is made from the same basic amino acid structure. So it doesn't matter whether we're a human being, a fish, a tree, a bacteria, a mushroom, we're all based on the same amino acid structure. And every amino acid protein in the plants and the animals is in a GAN state. So it's a plasma which has magnetical and gravitational fields. And we learned in the health section early on today that our body is made of billions of ganses forming the total plasma of the body. So each of those little ganses has its own magnetical gravitational field, but together they create the body's magnetical and gravitational field. And now we can start saying the same thing for the plants, because the plants are also made of billions of ganses forming the total plasma of the plant. And that the plants themselves have magnetical and gravitational fields. And here we'll discover later on that the different types of plants will have different magnetical gravitational fields as well. So at the end of the day, we can say that humans, animals, plants, we're all made of the same building blocks. And this is why we begin to start calling the plants and the vertical people, because they are also made of the same structure as amino acids. Plants, being the vertical people, are also sentient beings. They have a physical structure, which we can see. They also have emotions, and they have a soul. Many experiments have been done around the world which show how plants react to our thoughts and our actions. But all this has always been labeled as woo-woo science. You know, some of the experiment, for example, is you would take two plots of land next to each other, and you would ask one group of people to come and give those plants attention and water, and just give them, you know, loving thoughts. And then the other plot very next door, you ask some people to come there and give hate and just disgust for the plants. And you'll see the difference in the growth. The growth where the plants have had the attention, have the loving attention from us, are growing beautifully, whereas the plot next door, which has had the negative emotions, no attention at all, those plants do not grow very well. So that just that simple basic understanding makes us realize that we as a human being connect to plants on our emotional level, and plants react to us on an emotional level. And when we start connecting to the plants, it becomes a knowing, it's that connection. The plants themselves have a connection with each other through the amino acid structure, as they're all created from the same source on this planet. And when we will have the measurements, the instruments one day, we'll be able to measure the magnetical and gravitational fields of the plants, and we'll discover that how they communicate with each other is through these fields. And emotion is your communication line between the man and the plants. And this is why some people will have that connection and talk to their plants, you know, and it's just talking via the emotions. And it's the same when you'll see people, and some will call sort of have a green thumb, because whatever they do in their garden, it's always beautiful, because they are always interacting with their plants, giving their plants love and attention, whereas other people, that just doesn't happen because they just don't have that connection with their plants. And it all comes down to our emotional connection that we have with the plants around us. We have, as sort of a human being on this planet, we have chosen to ignore the way that the plants live and grow and the longevity of some plants, because this way we show that we are superior to them. You know, the plants, they are in a different time scale to us, because you look at a lettuce plant will have sort of an 8 to 12 week cycle, whereas you'll get some trees that are 1,000 years old, some trees that are 100 years old. So they're living in a different time scale to us. And they move in a different time scale to us. You know, to us, the plants and nature around us doesn't move much, but they're all moving, but it's in a different time scale that we just don't see. And the plants have been on this planet long before man and animals. And they've structured themselves into society where they can guarantee their survival. Because when one has a look at, there's about 1,500 types of animals on this planet, but there's hundreds of thousands of different plant types on this planet. And they're all just different living beings, different creatures that have chosen where they would like to live on this planet in the different conditions which suit them. So everything has a spirit or a soul. You know, spirit is the word that's often used, particularly by the original people and the indigenous people around the world. But from the smallest little rock, the bacteria in the soil, the plants, the birds, insects, trees, the rivers, the streams, the mountains, and the oceans, they all have a soul. And nature strives for balance and harmony continuously. And nature tells a story when one has to look and sit. And I urge a lot of you to go and find a nice spot in your garden or in the woods and go and sit there for an hour and just watch and observe everything that goes on around you. Just sit against a tree and watch. There's the whole another world out there that we have forgotten even exists. And we have to realize that we are also just a very small part of nature here on this planet Earth. And because we understand that we're all connected, so when we start destroying anything in nature, we are essentially destroying a part of ourselves. Because everything is connected, nothing is separate. This new understanding of the world around us through this plasmic technology is going to change the way that we see and perceive everything. It will give us a new understanding of what is out there. And if we're wanting to start communicating with other beings or creatures from different parts of this universe, I suggest we start right here in our own backyard first and learn to communicate with nature itself around us. Because it's just waiting to say hello and we'd like to learn from you. And nature is going to be a very great teacher for all of us in understanding this science, because we can go outside and see how it's operating there right in front of us all the time. With the technology, we'll learn, understand with the way the plants work and how our body works and how nature works. It's operating from that point of view of the science of the plasma. So in summary of today's workshop, we've understood from the health section that we all made from the basic amino acid structure, and that as the human body, you are a plasma reactor, and your soul creates the physical body on this environment of the earth. And so all creatures on this earth are also made of those same amino acid connections. We all come from the same source. And so all creatures on this planet have a soul as well. We're now open for questions.
Any of our panelists have a question?
Good day, Jalal here.
Hi, Jalal.
Hi. What was the question again, please? I didn't hear it quite good.
There was no question. Do you have a question?
I thought that was a question. No, thank you. I don't have.
Okay.
Well, we have a statement from Shweta in the live stream chat, which goes, yes, indeed, the trees are like guardians. A feeling always comes when we are around them, as they know the knowingness, much, much more than us.
Yeah, they've been around longer than what we have on this planet, so they have many stories to tell.
It's interesting, in Canada, we just had a few days ago a National Tree Day, which was dedicated to trees. And Joyce Murray, who's a representative for in the West Coast for the Parliament, actually got up in Parliament and announced the National Tree Day and that it's a dedication to trees. And they talked about tree planting, and she was a tree planter in her earlier life, and now she's one of the main politicians in Canada. And it's interesting because I actually planted trees in one of her tree planting camps, and I actually worked for that company that is a tree planting company for about 10 years. That was run by her and her husband, Dirk Brinkman. So it's interesting that there is that tree consciousness among many people, at least in Canada and many countries of the world. And people, I understand they just planted several million trees in India, I believe it was. They had a huge project where they got tens or even, I think it was hundreds of thousands of volunteers. I believe they planted tens of millions of trees, something like that.
Yeah, there's many people around, many millions of people around the planet that have the connection to where they live and the nature. You know, it's just now that we've always sort of labeled the sort of the people as a bit out there. But now we can begin to understand that it comes down to the science, and if we can understand the science, then we know that what these people have been talking about for all this time is true. So it does open up a whole new perspective for a lot of us.
It makes the insult they used to call me, "Oh, you're just a tree hugger, Libby." And now it's a compliment.
Yes. Now you can say thank you.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the same story when
maybe I was just going to say, maybe the trees say, "Oh, you're just a human hugger," to the other trees. Don't be a human hugger. Stay with us, you know. Yeah. I wonder what they do say sometimes.
Not very pleasant, I'm sure.
But we do have a symbiotic relationship with the plants and all things around us. So I am sure that on a basic level, when we connect with our fields, that we both feel good.
Yes. Yeah, we'll learn later on how go into a bit more detail in the whole connection that we have. And I think if we listen to Thursday's teaching from Mr. Kesh, he's going to go into a bit more on the soul details of the plant, which is going to be very, very fascinating.
That we are changing the school of thought.
Yes, and it's hard to change our thoughts. It's hard to understand and accept that all these creatures around us have a soul, they have emotion, because I think we tend to rather want to ignore those facts because then it makes it easier for us. But we have to come to terms with it, and it is going to be very, very difficult for all of us to come to terms.
That brings us to Wolfgang's question here in the live stream chat. It says, so if we destroy other souls by eating food, we destroy ourselves? And how can this be changed by thanking or similar emotions until we don't need to eat anymore?
It's going to be a process to get to the point where, yes, we won't be eating, but everything has to be done step by step, and it's a stage. And the first step, I think, for me and a lot of people, is to understand this first and come to terms with it before you can move on and move beyond it.
Well, I think there's already those that have come across that kind of emotional contact and said to themselves that I'm not going to eat this anymore because there's too much of a connection. But then you get to the other side of, I really like that, but I know I can't and I will not. What do I have in replacement? Because that is going to be the biggest hurdle for us, is our addiction of putting something in our mouth to eat it. When all we need is, and all we're looking for is the fields of the thing that we're eating. So if we're able to supplement that, we will have to, in a way, to be able to overcome our addiction, I'm going to call it.
Yeah, we understand. I mean, the food that we eat provides the body with energy. That's the simple and purest form. But we have to understand that, yes, we will be able to start replacing that energy, and that also the food is an emotional attachment for a lot of us, because we'll sit around a table together as a family and eat food. People eat food as a comfort. So it's more of an emotional factor than anything else. And we'll have to overcome that emotional factor.
I think we also have to look at the fact that, when we get to understand this technology and the connection we have with everything, it's going to have to get to the point where we don't eat, because, one man's pet dog is another man's food in China. And, it's just because there's a closer connection that people find it abhorrent to eat that. But when we end up with a very close connection to plants, which we're going to, it would be just as abhorrent to eat your plant friends. And so the sort of glee with which a lot of vegetarians try to poke fun at people who eat meat it's just another point on the scale of which friends do you eat and which friends don't you eat. So it's there's no moral superiority at all anymore either.
Any other questions?
I have no question, but I'd like to share a photo made by myself.
Sure.
So no copyright issues.
There is a hand raised by Ree. Did he have something more to ask or a question before we move to that, Sandor?
Okay, this was related to something previous, so maybe it will become not actual.
Peter has his hand up too here. I'll bring him in.
If you allow me just 20 seconds.
Yeah, go for it, Sandor.
This is about a tree which has a very good friendship with children. In Budapest, we have the Margaret Island on Danube, and there is a very old platan tree. This photo was made in March. And it looks like it's extending its branches, like extending some arms for the kids, for the children to play with.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
So that was my 20 seconds.
Thank you, Sandor.
That was lovely.
There were those questions there? Or...
Yes, this is Peter.
Yes, Peter.
And I had a question in regards to the different aspects of emotion that was brought up. The first part was during the presentation on the soul. The emotions were spoken of as being an aspect of the past that was blocking us in certain ways from expressing our full potential, if I put it in my own language. And then you're talking about using the emotions as a way to communicate with the plants. So, I mean, I understand the difference, but I think it would be good to explain how those two aspects are different. Because one, when I'm communicating with my plants or my garden, it's total presence. It's total, you know, giving and communication, and I can see and experience the difference of when I am in that state and when I'm not, and the plants respond accordingly, where we're talking then in the soul aspect of how the emotions then are keeping us in the past. And I was wondering if you could go into that a little bit.
I think when we are in nature and we with the plants, it's on a very loving basis that we connect with the plants. Otherwise, if you don't have that connection with the plants, you just don't go out in nature. You know, we either do or we don't. And so when we do, it's on that loving basis. And I just have my experience. And with the communication with the plants, it's just a knowing that you have with the plants. You know, it's very seldom, but you only get that loving effect. You know, when you go and walk in a forest, you don't come out of a forest feeling angry or upset. You come out of a forest feeling loving and full of energy. It's because that's what you're interacting with on the plant side, is through the sort of the loving emotion. And the plants are only giving all the time.
The plants give, and if we give to the plants, they give in return. And it seems to build a wondrous thing. And yes, it's through emotion that you're giving because you love them. That's what I feel. I look at those plants and I say, you're just so beautiful, you're gorgeous, and I love you. And they respond to that. It is an emotion. When we talk about the emotions that are blocking, and that's history, these are the negative things, the negative consequences of our perception of reality and when things haven't gone our way. And this is where the unconditional part comes, because the negative emotions come from certain conditions not being met. You know, we expect something and then it doesn't happen. We expect love from our parents and we don't get it, or we expect to be able to do something and we can't achieve it, and it gives us frustration or anger or anxiety. So all these negative things are what creates the filter, but the positiveness is what's radiating from our soul. And yes, it's still an emotion, and we can call it an emotion, but it's coming from our soul, and it's the giving aspect and the loving aspect, and that is what connects us to the plants, and they just thrive on that, and they give us back. It's incredible how they just give back to us. They are wonderful, wonderful creatures in that regard.
But it's not only the plants, though. It's the rocks. It's the beauty of the environment that you're in at the moment. So if you take a moment and enjoy the beauty, no matter where you are, because you can see the beauty in the tundra of the far north, or in the mountains in New Zealand, right? You can feel the beauty there of the environment.
Sometimes we connect on certain levels, because I've found it hard to sometimes find the beauty here in Australia when I've been used to a different African, beauty, because Australia is very harsh and the environment is very different and the colors are different and the feel is different. But yes, everything has got its own beauty if you can connect to the fields, because everything is a field strength. And so it's just a case of understanding that aspect and seeing the beauty in everything around us.
I know exactly what you mean, because I'm from British Columbia, so a lot of mountains, and I always feel myself wanting to go back to those mountains. And unfortunately, I'm not that far, but I'm not that close either. So I have to find the beauty of where I am. And it is a matter of attuning yourself to that environment to be able to see that beauty.
Yeah, just connection with those right fields.
Rick, something to say? Sorry.
We have a comment from Doug, and that is a preamble to my question, which is, Doug says, we eat even the atoms or atmas, but they willingly give their energy in loving service to us. So my question would be, let's pretend that I'm a piece of celery, let's say, and I'm about to be eaten, chomped on. And I'm thinking, okay, well, looks like the end of my life here as I know it. But what if I was as a piece of celery, and I see this big, mouth coming at me? What if that mouth had that unconditional love attached to it, and that was the intent coming into this engagement, was fully unconditional love for that piece of celery, and elevating that piece of celery up to a higher level, such that that piece of celery recognizes, wow, I'm going to become part of this unconditional loving entity. What a better life I can possibly be of service for, to give to this higher entity, to help them with their work, to become part of them, to be carried with them in this field of unconditional love. Wow, that's way better than hanging out with my friends in the field, back in the matter level of the dirt, hanging out in the dirt. There's not much happening there. I grow, I hang out, but wow, what a chance to become part of something greater, something larger, something of a higher consciousness, a higher level. You wouldn't recognize that as a piece of celery, but you recognize that there's something benevolent about this entity, not malevolent. Some entities, the last one that took a chunk out of me, well, boy, he had a real attitude, and I'm glad I didn't become part of him. But this one, whoa, he's showing unconditional love. I would love to be part of that entity, okay? This is what I'm presenting as a question. Can we not elevate our food to the point where the food naturally wishes to become part of us? We wish it to become part of us, and it is a natural merging of the fields and exchange of energies in the name of service, not in the name of personal indulgence or the name of, oh boy, you taste good, or you know, any even in the name of just getting energy out of it. It's in the name of being of service to allow us the energy to be able to be of service to others. And it's otherwise we may not be able to be of service if we were to lose our health or to lose our energy and so on.
I got a question for you though, Rick, on that.
Okay.
Where was the celery raised? Was it raised in a greenhouse? Was it raised with love? Or was it raised on a farm with a bunch of pesticides? Does that make a difference?
Well, either way, it's got a soul, and either way, we have to elevate it to come to a common understanding, a merging of fields, rather than what we call a killing of something. Because killing, if you look at it differently, and instead of killing, call it transmutation, transformation of those fields. And we're transforming it from this thing that looks like a celery into a GAN state in our mouth and into the plasma state inside of our body for getting the energy out of it, and then back into the GAN state, back into the matter level and out the other end of the body eventually. But the essence of it, some of the actual elements of that substance, but definitely the energies of it, the essence it gets embedded into our body. It becomes part of us.
That becomes a symbiotic relationship again, because some plants take a strawberry, for example. They want to be eaten. That is the fruit to be eaten, so that they're able to spread and continue being strawberries for the rest of the world. And there's many different circumstances of that. But what I think you're trying to say is that even with the way that something was raised, let's say a piece of celery in a greenhouse with love, compared to on a farm raised with its other celery through a bunch of other inputs that are not good for it. If by elevating it before you ingest it, would that make a difference? Would that bring that celery to the point of my life is worth it anyways?
I think so. It's in that sense, it doesn't matter how the celery was raised in a way, but that energy will become part of us either way. But for the benefit of the celery, and for the benefit of the relationship, the karma between this fruit or vegetable and ourselves, we have to make the energies equal, and make them equal to us. In other words, make it all us in a way, because everything is, from the point of view of the soul and other souls, all souls are souls, all center principality energy, and occurring all in that moment and so on. So if we can see eye to eye with the celery basically, and just assimilate it, we are assimilating then rather than killing. There's no killing in that instance. It's an assimilation of energies. It's a transmutation of energies.
But haven't we been taught to pray for what we eat since we were all children, basically?
Yeah, we usually try to get through the prayer part really quick and get that over with, so we can go chomping on the food, generally speaking.
Right. So the essence of that statement was lost.
Right. Well, this is the thing, because it's not taught in a scientific manner or anything. It's taught as something that the church tells you to do, or someone tells you to do in order to be thankful because you have food and people in Africa don't, is one of the stories and that kind of thing. It's more of a a gratitude thing, a general gratitude thing, rather than a specific bringing the food to life exercise, which might be more beneficial in that moment to, you know, be equal with the fields, to get into the fields rather than into some psychology about it or some guilt trip or something that often is the case with that. That prayer around the meal is a lot of stress for many people. It's also very beneficial for others as well. And I mean, it does tend to allow you to at least focus on the meal and on being thankful, at least, which is part of that emotion of gratitude, extreme gratitude, should be there with each, you know, bite we take, essentially. And that's so often not the case, and we might not even think too much about the food until we've already wolfed it down, so to speak.
And then said, I ate too much. Yep.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead, Jim.
I think there's many ways, coming back to your original point there, Rick, is are we coming up with wonderful stories so that we don't feel that guilty about eating them? And then the other point at the same time, the other side of the coin is, as Vin said, there are plants which want their flowers and their fruit to be eaten so they can distribute the seeds all over the place, which guarantees their survival of their offspring. So it's sort of two dilemmas that we do face with the plants.
Well, maybe they've said, well, you're going to eat me anyway, so I might as well make it worthwhile.
Well, that happens in
They
viruses.
outwitted us once again.
That actually does happen in viruses, where they create a certain circumstance or a certain environment in their host, which then turns into another aspect of its life, which turns into something else eating it, which turns into something else eating, and the chain starts all over again, and that's how it guarantees its survival.
Mm-hmm.
Hi everyone. I'd like to ask. I understand this as a teaching. We are not doing this anymore. Maybe it's good you come to the teaching part, because when we go and translate this to other language, this is more like a debate, and I think it's lost the meaning. Don't you agree?
Perhaps we got too far afield, Gene. Okay. Yeah,
Thanks.
we've gone away from maybe the essence of this teaching here. So,
Right. Any other questions, and we can call it a day?
Yeah, and that mean I had the raise hand for a long time, so I came through it. So I would like that because you talk here about all creatures have a soul, and someone else already talked about it, the mineral world also, and you can give this understanding because we talk about it. This is all magnetic fields that we express through and make physicality, and there's different experience of understanding and souls. So if you can so talk about this that even atom has a soul, so the earth has a soul, so we belong, we are all connected through the soul, and that's all.
Yes, thanks. You are correct in that everything, even the rock and the crystal and the atom, has a soul. I didn't want to bring it into this one at first because even just creating or saying that the plants and all the other animals around us have a soul is going to be quite a lot of information for people to process. So we need to come to terms with certain things first before we can go on to say that everything else has a soul, because then it becomes a bit more harder for people to understand and accept. So we have to go step by step, but you are correct.
Yeah, I just talk about because some questions touch points, and for answer could be for good for this idea. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of information to this, and we're trying to sort of bring it out on a very slow, methodical process so that people can digest bits of information, and then we can move on and build on it in the later parts of these workshops. So, and we do realize that there's a lot of private students that have been around the foundation for a long time, and so they do have a lot more knowledge, and so, which is great, but we're trying to really bring this out to the public there that haven't had a chance to really go into the information. So we're just trying to bring it out on a step-by-step basis for the public to understand. So we do have to go that little bit slower.